The World Health Organization chief on Monday warned that an estimated 1 million children a year die worldwide because of wasting. Tedros pointed out that globally, 45 million children under the age of 5, or 1 in 15, are suffering from wasting, a condition where they are dangerously thin for their height. He further noted that nearly 14 million of these children, over one-third, suffer from severe wasting, putting them at the highest risk of mortality. Moderately or severely wasted children are 11 times more likely to die due to their weakened immune response to diseases such as diarrhea and pneumonia. The one-day summit focuses international attention on the deepening global food security crisis and helps boost efforts to achieve zero hunger and end malnutrition. To discuss this further, we have with us Dr. Ali Horriyat from London, who is an international relations expert. Assalamu alaikum, doctor. What is an easy-to-understand definition for wasted children and what dangers do they face?
Alaikum salam, and first of all, I want to express my gratitude for having me on your show. I would tell people that wasted children is defined as children who are severely malnutrition. The official definition takes into verbiage difficult terms such as 2 standard deviations and expected weight-height ratios in specific ages, specifically under 5. But most people don't have these average ratios. They don't have the knowledge for them memorized in the ways that pediatricians would, for example. So it would be really easy for people to understand that this means children who are severely thin, children who are severely malnutritioned, children who are not going to grow to their adequate capacity, and those who are under the age of 5, from birth to 5, who need this support.
Are there enough resources to help these children, and why is the situation deteriorating?
In terms of resources, there is no shortage of resources. We have sufficient food in the world. Certain parts of the global population are in severe famine and malnutrition and poverty, but there is no statistical reference globally to suggest that we have about 6 out of 8 billion people who can be fed and the other 2 billion cannot be fed because of a natural shortage of food. We have sufficient food. In fact, we waste about a third of the world's food in different sectors, from production all the way to consumption. And as you mentioned earlier, 45 million children suffer from this specific form of malnutrition. Can we fix this? Yes. In terms of having the food, having the supplies, being able to support this, we can fix it. In fact, there are countries in the world, notably India, has almost 20% wasted children capacity. And if you look at India, it is not a country that is statistically poor, and it has some of the wealthiest people in the world. So we do have the resources, certainly. It's just a matter of infrastructure, a reversal of capitalist trends, competition, and the way we envisage each other, supporting each other and feeding these children in a manner of compassion, first of all.
Against the backdrop of severe violence against children, particularly in conflict zones, is there any hope for international humanitarian food programs to yield expected results, and what can be done?
Well, in this perspective, first of all, these children need to be fed well. They need to be fed on an accelerated feeding program to allow them to recover and heal, hoping that they do recover in the first place. You don't need science to tell you that a child who eats a fraction of the average child will suffer during the years growing, and will suffer and not be able to grow in that way. On another point, the actual to-do feedings or forms of food that many reports agree upon rely on breastfeeding. If you look at a lot of the science goes back to breastfeeding, and breastfeeding comes down to also a social issue. when you discuss breastfeeding, I mean, you're looking at a mother who is able to sufficiently and satisfactorily breastfeed a child with nutrients. And this is not really possible in places where there is severe famine and poverty, because it's not just the children who are not eating, it's also the adults, it's also the mothers. And with stress and other factors in play, it really deteriorates the whole ecosystem of allowing children to grow out of this situation. And then you, of course, have issues like infectious diseases, which are not treated in babies in certain parts of the world that suffer mostly from this, because they don't have access to the same privileges we do in the UK or North America. And so they suffer. And when they go untreated, these infectious diseases support the malnutrition. And through issues like diarrhea, severe diarrhea, they end up potentially, unfortunately, into death. And of course, speaking of the infectious diseases and such problems, there is the issue of clean water and sanitation, where a lot of children do not have access to clean water when you look at the factors that support malnutrition and especially wasted children. Now, a lot of organizations, a lot of charities, NGOs, the UN, the WHO, even certain governments are trying to support this by including micronutrients and by including food supplies, micronutrients such as zinc, for example, or food supplies to a lot of these malnutrition children. But the issue is developing these programs doesn't rely on the programs themselves. They're not in a vacuum. So they rely on the social circumstances that surround these. So climate change, conflict, modern cutthroat capitalism, the competition. These are all true enemies of the organizations that are trying to support children through feeding programs. And finally, you have to take into consideration the mental health that has to be addressed. A lot of these children are being saved urgently on a physical level to be able to be fed, to be able to survive, essentially. But what happens when they do survive? What happens to the stress and the mental health situation of these children as they grow, as they combat severe malnutrition and they raise from there? So in essence, to reverse wasted children and malnutrition in general, it is not a matter of supplying food. It's not a matter of suggesting, do we have enough food to feed everybody on the planet? Certainly we do have enough food, but it is a matter of thinking no child should breathe hungry. And if no child should breathe hungry, then the science to reverse this is available. The technology to reverse this is available. We just don't have the compassion to reverse this because we follow profit for goals and not a state of harmony. If we do follow a state of harmony, we would certainly be able to support children.
Thank you so much, Doctor. That's all we have today. Unfortunately, we've run out of time.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.